this out.
And now, from Louisville, Kentucky, the horse capital of the world and sports junkies' finest, giving you wagering advice and sports analysis. It's On the Switch with your host, Gino G.
Welcome back to On the Switch Show. I'm your host, Gino G. On the back end, we got Travis throwing it down as always. And today we have a special guest, a good friend of mine that I met about a year ago, currently enlisted into the military. Shout out to all the active and retired military personnel. I do want to invite, so happy we finally got a guest into the booth with us. Chris, what's going on, man?
Yeah, what's going on?
So we're talking about SEC football today. I must be honest. After last season, Georgia and Alabama playing in the national championship game, how do you not make this conference the best conference in America? What do you think, Chris? What do you think?
I don't think it's been an argument that they're not the best conference in America for a long time. I mean, Alabama's been a powerhouse for, ever. That's why they are the dynasty in college football for a reason.
Right. Even when you think about it, outside of Alabama, you still have Auburn, who won the national championship with Cam Newton. Now you have teams like Mississippi State that are coming up, Georgia, who now made the championship last year. Which, by the way, I don't want to say choke because I think choke's a bad word, but they had Alabama dead to rights.
They did.
Dead to rights. So I think Kirby Smart heading in the right direction as well. But let's go ahead and just dive in a little bit to the numbers when it comes to the SEC football season. Alabama, obviously, the clear choice to win the championship, SEC title, that is, at 1.5 to 1. Georgia's 3 to 1. Auburn 7 to 1. Mississippi State 10 to 1. Florida 14 to 1. Texas A&M 16 to 1, as well as LSU, 16 to 1. South Carolina 20 to 1. Mizzou 20 to 1. Tennessee 50 to 1 with Ole Miss and Arkansas. And then rounding out your team, the Kentucky Wildcats 100 to 1 and Vandy 100 to 1. So let's go ahead and we'll kick this off with Kentucky. Let's talk about them for a second. Steven Johnson gone. Right. Okay, so now you have two JUCO transfers that are coming in. Still, from what I read and what I understand, is still kind of a up in the air kind of battle.
Yeah, it seems like that every year over there at Kentucky. It's up until the day we play the first game, it's undecided. So Gunnar Hoke and Terry Wilson, from what I know right now, are duking it out for that starting spot. So we'll see.
Well, I must say, I guess when I think Kentucky now, the way their offensive system seems to be running with Stoops, Terry Wilson seems to be more that guy rather than Gunnar Hoke. Now, could be wrong. It seemed to me, I don't know if you watched the spring game, but in the spring game, Gunnar Hoke was tossing it all over the yard. All over the yard. So I think certain games would fit Hoke better.
I think it's all going to depend on who's hot at the time, really, and being able to have all those threats in the backfield paired up with, the likes of like Benny Snell back there. It's going to keep a lot of people guessing. So I think it might actually work out really well for us. Now,
are you a fan of the 2 QB system?
At times I am, but I like stability in the backfield. The team's got to know who the leader and the general is back there, like they like to say.
I completely agree. Now, I know it works at points in times for certain teams. I am not a fan of the 2 QB system. I just think it's horrible for camaraderie. I think it's horrible for planning wise. Like, you can't just go into the middle of a game and say, hey, wait, a play or 10 plays for this guy, and then bring him out, or one possession here, one possession there. And it just seems so odd to me, I guess. Now, with Kentucky, and I must say, 100 to 1 just seems crazy, right? If you put them along with Vanderbilt as the two teams lowest on the totem pole, I think you're nuts. You can't even put Vanderbilt and Kentucky in the same sentence, right? Vanderbilt is going to be atrocious. And it's probably saying it lightly. Now with Kentucky, again, you get basically a gimme in week 1. Okay.
Should be. Kentucky likes to be Kentucky, though, right. So I think that's probably where those odds come in.
So Central Michigan has been kind of a goofy game for you all, right, over the past couple of seasons. Now, let's just give that one to Kentucky, right?
Right.
Okay. So now it comes down to – I know. Here it comes. You play Florida at Florida. Now, we're going to talk about Florida here in just a few minutes, but you play Florida at Florida. If perhaps Kentucky is going to make a run, you got to break the cycle, right? At some point.
You know, the 30 years is too long. I mean, it's time. We had our chances the last 3 years, I guess now. And we haven't
the whole
pulled it
shot
off.
clock, play
the
clock,
game clock, the play clock expiring. When the umpire's looking right at it.
It didn't expire. It didn't. Expire.
Yeah, right. It didn't expire. And then not guarding any wide receivers out there on the perimeter for some plays, we just shoot ourselves in the foot. So if we can, I think if Stoops can really get the guys to focus, we can really give them a good shot. And I want him to beat it. We're going to get it this year. This is the year.
Although, I'm a Louisville fan,
right?
Sometimes these streaks just have to end. Enough's enough, right? And yeah. I think the biggest hill to climb is that win. I think if Kentucky gets that win, not necessarily maybe this season, but I think it could kind of be like, whew, okay, yeah. Settle down.
Yeah. I think if Stoops can get that Florida win, he has solidified himself down there at Kentucky for a long time to come. He keeps improving every year. CBS Sports put him on the hot seat here recently. It's they heating up as their little index likes to do it, and I think that's kind of crazy. Just because of all the progress he's made at Kentucky. I mean, you have to be realistic. From where we were under the Joker Phillips era to where we are now is absolutely amazing.
Well, if it wasn't for Woodson, Joker Phillips, and
Rich Brooks.
I mean, those two guys wouldn't have jobs, right?
Yep.
I mean, so in Kentucky wouldn't be even a remote thought if it wasn't for Woodson. Now you can talk about Cobb as well, and there's a couple other guys, but I agree. I think for this season, especially this being, I think, in my opinion, Snell's last season.
I look for this to be his last season with the amount of yards that he's pulling out every year and the work that he's doing. He's gone. I mean, it's guaranteed.
Were you surprised that he came back?
A little bit, yeah. I looked for him to enter in the draft, and the fact that he's come back and he wants to help us keep rolling and keep building I love it.
Well, we talked about it earlier. He had 1,318 yards in the regular season last season.
Right.
Now, when you look at the schedule, you avoid Alabama. You avoid Auburn. You avoid you play Mississippi State. But who's the other? You avoid LSU.
Right.
Okay, so you have to think 1,300 yards is feasible for
Absolutely.
sure again. I mean, and you would think, I know you'll have some playmakers on the outside. Now, whether they catch the ball or not is, something other.
They were a young group of guys last year. They towards the end of the season they really started to improve. But I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement out there.
So to me, I think you core everything around Snell, right? I mean, and then you would imagine that Wildcat would be a common theme, probably,
especially with the threat that Wilson and Hoke are supposed to be in the backfield. We run a lot of Wildcat as it is. I really see that being big scene in the backfield.
So Central Michigan at home win. We say Florida.
We're winning. We're going to beat Florida.
Okay,
we're going.
So we're 2-0, right?
2-0.
You come back home to Lexington. You play Murray State. What do you think? 70-0.
Oh, God. I'm not that ambitious, but I think that's a W there.
Okay. So now, the key game, and if the Florida game's not a key game, this one definitely is. You come home, or you stay home, you play Mississippi State.
The Mississippi State game has always been, for some reason, like an Achilles heel for Kentucky over the last few years. They're a really tough team. Them and the South Carolina game are going to be really tough games for Kentucky this year. I don't expect both of them to be W's for the Cats. I think we'll split them.
Well, it's interesting you bring up South Carolina because that's just 7 days later.
Right.
You're still at home and you play South Carolina. And then after that, it gets a little interesting. You go to Texas A&M, now Jimbo Fisher. We'll get to them in just a little bit. And then you come home to Vanderbilt, which you all should beat by a bunch.
Yeah.
Okay. But then at Missouri, Georgia at home, at Tennessee, who questionable as to what they're going to look like. Then Middle Tennessee, and then at Louisville. I just, when you avoid the big dogs from the other side, Auburn, Alabama especially. Now,
Right.
I know Mississippi State, although have a new coach, I mean, Fitzgerald comes back from a gruesome injury. Their running back, I can't think of his name, Arillis Williams or something like that. He was a 1,000-yard rusher last season.
Right.
He comes back, but all the big games, you would think, well, you play, Mississippi State at home. You play South Carolina, who I think has a big chance to win the East at home.
Absolutely.
You play at Florida, I understand, but a lot of these key games are what could be swing-changing games as far as the entire season. You get those games at home. You got to think playing at Commonwealth, got to give yourself a big chance.
Yeah, it's absolutely. They have the tools there to really get a lot of good wins against some really quality opponents this year. But it's all like that old Kentucky curse, like we always like to talk about. We have some bad luck to where
no 6-6 this year, right?
Right, absolutely not. That's what a lot of people were saying. The Cats are expected to do, but
well, it's interesting because right now Kentucky, the over/under for amount of wins this season is 5.5. You gonna take the over?
Absolutely. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I look for Kentucky to get at least another 7-5 season off the regular season, and one of those wins being Florida. I think that's really going to be a hallmark win for Stoops, and I would love to see us finish strong with a bowl win this year and really cap it off with a great season.
I think you all have all the makings, especially with Benny Snell. Benny Snell, if perhaps, imagine Benny Snell on Alabama. You're talking about probably a Heisman, perhaps a Heisman front runner. I'm not going to say a Heisman, right? But a Heisman front runner. I mean, you can't rush for 1,300 yards and play on Alabama and not obviously be considered, for a
Absolutely.
Heisman. So and I think if he does it at Kentucky, he'd be able to do it anywhere. So it's maybe a little bit, for you, fortunate as a fan of Kentucky to watch Benny Snell. It's unfortunate that he doesn't get the notoriety that he probably should receive, knowing that he rushed for 1,100 yards in his first season, 1,318 yards just in the regular season last season. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that could be part of the reason why he came back. He's trying to really build that name up for Kentucky and, make us no longer the doormat that people like to think we are. We're fighting to be a contender in the East because the East is going through an identity crisis the last couple of years. It's Tennessee has lost their way a little bit. Georgia is, feeling their oats again, and it's a real shakeup.
I'll be honest when I say, and we'll just kind of dive into it right now. I think the East is as wide open as it probably ever has been that I can at least remember. Being 30 years old, I can't remember the East being this wide open. You're talking about Florida, who now gets Mullen, but. Mm-hmm. Just imagine or think about all the problems that McElwain had with the players, right? Now, maybe Mullen comes in and just says, hey, that's it. Throw your shit out the door, whatever. This is how it's going to be. This is what it is. And everybody just responds. Perhaps. But if he still has a bunch of knuckleheads in there, you're talking about Florida could maybe go through a little bit, almost as you take the words out of your mouth, a little bit of an identity crisis, knowing they're going through a coaching change. I'm not a big fan of Todd Grantham, who is a defensive coordinator at Louisville. That's now the defensive coordinator at Florida. I don't like his schemes at all. So I think Georgia, they lost Sony Michel. They lost Chubb.
Mm-hmm. That was a big loss for them.
Right. They lose 5 starters on the defense, right, all to the draft. I just think it's hard for me to imagine that Georgia's just going to come in and just steamroll everybody, right? And so if you take those two teams out, you're left with South Carolina, who's ranked in the top 25 preseason on multiple polls, right? And you're talking about a team that's ranked in the top 25 that 6 out of their last 11 games, they scored 17 points or less. They still finished 9-4, but they scored 17 points or less 6 of their last 11 games. You're telling me, as a Kentucky fan, right? You're like, okay, we're playing South Carolina. All we have to do is score 20. I like my chances, right? I'll take my at home. Yeah, I'll take my chances against a team who's going to be more defensive oriented, which is Muschamp's way. I mean, that's just how he is. He's not going to go out there and try and score 35 points on you. So, to me, this is as wide open as it gets. Do I think Kentucky has a monster chance of winning the East? I'm not sure if I'm going to go that far, but I will tell you, after week 2, you get a surprise win, in the streak and all that in Florida. Big chance, especially with South Carolina. You get Georgia at home. You get Georgia at home. You never know what happens. An injury could happen. I know, Swift is going to be in the backfield, not Sony Michel or Chubb, but I think Georgia is going to be on the downhill. They're going to definitely regress. How about that? Definitely regress.
I wouldn't say downhill. They'll definitely feel the loss of those starters and those guys they lost to the draft. Absolutely, they won't be going back to the title game. That's for sure. But they're still going to be a power.
So going over coaching change, I know I mentioned a couple. Dan Mullins to Florida. Now Jim McElwain gone. I don't even, is he coaching anywhere? Do you know?
Not that I know of. The last I heard, I think he was being looked at for a couple spots, but I've been out of the news feed for a little while.
So at Tennessee, we got Jeremy Pruitt, which, okay, we talked about this before. How about the whole Tennessee shamble, right? I mean, it's like Greg Schiano. Well, Greg Schiano is the new coach of Tennessee. Oh, wait. No, Tennessee fan. Oh, we can't have Greg Schiano because he's racist or, whatever they say.
Right.
some bullshit, right? And then it's like, oh, wait. Here we go. Mike Leach. Oh, no. We can't hire him either. So, well, who's left? Jeremy Pruitt. Jeremy Pruitt. Oh, yeah, Jeremy Pruitt. Yeah, he's our guy. Tennessee does have athletes, right? As they always have. But I don't know much about Jeremy Pruitt. I don't know what he's capable of. It's going to be hard for me to back a guy like Jeremy Pruitt in Tennessee who's basically just starting over from scratch. So again, take them away. Now, Mississippi State, Dan Mullen goes from Mississippi State to Florida.
Yep.
And we said, okay, Florida hires Dan Mullen. We were like, huh?
It just kind of didn't really make any sense because he got let go from Mississippi State because they said he was too mediocre, I guess, for him. And then Florida's like, hey, we'll take that guy. And they just got rid of a guy like that. I didn't understand that one at all.
So Joe Moorhead, now, what's interesting is Penn State's offensive coordinator. So Penn State's offensive coordinator, I wouldn't consider that juggernaut. I mean, when you have Saquon Barkley, we can go out there and run plays and score touchdowns. I mean, let's be real. So, Joe Moorhead. Oh yeah, the offensive juggernaut, Joe Moorhead. No, hard pass. Hey, your favorite one though. We're gonna disagree. Wait, we'll save that one for last. Chad Morris, who I'm extremely interested in because he's just you want to talk about juggernaut offense, right? Mm-hmm. He wants to run 786 plays a game. Brett Bielema gone at Arkansas. Chad Morris in. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think Arkansas is going to do anything this season, but I like Chad Morris.
Give him a few years and they'll be dangerous.
Right. Moving forward, getting athletes out there and running, an offense, like I said, that wants to run just a billion plays a game. Now, to the real disagreement tonight. Texas A&M, they say, hey, Kevin Sumlin, shove it. We're getting Jimbo Fisher, 10 years, $75 million. What do you think?
I think Jimbo will have some pretty good success out there at
Wrong.
Texas A&M. I know.
Wrong.
Yeah, wrong. You're wrong. That's what you say. I think it'll work out for him. That's a lot of money that they're giving him. You give him a few years, and he can really bring in some talent down there. And Texas A&M's got a good name behind him and a good reputation. So I think they'll be pretty powerful.
So it's interesting because when we talked about this, and the reason why I say I know this is going to be a disagreement is when I brought it up to you, you were like, "Oh, I think it's going to be good." He was good at Florida State. I think Texas A&M, with what someone has done, has become a household name when it comes to college football. I think people know. Oh, I think the first thing people think of is Johnny Manziel.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think he put Texas A&M on the map.
He absolutely did.
Now, Jimbo Fisher comes. He's like, whoa, wait. They were already a household name. Now they get Jimbo Fisher. He won a national championship in 2013 with Florida State. Look, let me tell you something. Let me enlighten everybody when I say Jimbo Fisher basically beat up on the ACC that was rebuilding. Clemson was not Clemson now. Louisville is not Louisville with Lamar Jackson. Louisville with Lamar Jackson and Florida State can't beat them. Right? Jimbo Fisher can't beat Louisville. But now he's going to go to Texas A&M and win a national championship. No. Hard pass. But let's go over some of the top teams. Alabama. Young defense, especially up front, led by, Raquan Davis. Deontay Thompson has been nothing short of fantastic in spring and this entire offseason to help anchor the back. I'll be honest. I think when I think Alabama defense, young, talented, speed, ability to tackle, I don't care if they throw out freshmen in high school. Somehow, some way, Saban will throw guys out there that just make plays. Now, offensive side of the ball. Who are you going with? You going with Tua? Or are you going with Jalen Hurts, who's for a fact is just never going to turn the ball over?
Personally, I would stick with Hurt. And just because that ball security and you can rely on him, he brings that experience and everything. It's
never going to do anything wrong.
Nope.
Literally, never. Now, as we saw in the national championship game, in certain situations, especially the fact that no one knew anything about Tua, I think helped his cause big time.
Yep.
But the fact that Hurts is going to go out there, he's won SEC titles. He's won national championships. Now, I understand that he didn't end the game last season, but I think Hurts, not like you said, ball security, not turning the ball over, knows the system, knows the plays, knows the players, has been in those situations before. I just think Hurts, for me at least, is the guy.
I agree.
He's the guy. He's the guy. So now, I will say, when talking about Alabama, Ridley's gone, but you still have playmakers on the outside. I think, personally, Hurts, Tua, whoever, has plenty of weapons outside, has a running game that is just going to be unstoppable, right? Again, I guess we can mention the fact that I'm a Louisville fan, right? So first game of the season, Louisville, big shot. They got a big shot.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something when I say, if Louisville doesn't stop them in the run game, or at least limit the amount of yards, especially after contact, it is going to be an absolute trouncing. I don't think, even with Hurts, I just don't see them lining up and just gunning it 40 times.
That's just not Alabama's play style. They're a juggernaut smash mouth ball program, and they always have been. The thing that Alabama kind of needs to worry about Louisville though is Petrino loves that high-powered offense and racking up the points and, running as hard as he can. And every now and then a quarterback will sneak in on Alabama and really hurt him.
It's interesting because over the last 7 seasons, they only have 6 losses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of those 6 losses, 5 of them have been mobile quarterbacks.
Yep.
Okay? Jawon Pass is a mobile quarterback. How good is he? We'll find out really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jawon Pass, not as speedy as somebody like Lamar Jackson, who I think would have success against Alabama, but as good as Louisville, and I don't mean to switch over back to the ACC, but Louisville will only be as good as Jawon Pass is. You got Jalen Smith, who should be a first-team All-American on the outside. You got weapons for days, running backs. I mean, speed everywhere. As good as Jawon Pass is going to be, and any quarterback in the SEC or anybody Alabama faces, if you want to beat Alabama, you have to have a quarterback that is both mobile and can throw the ball deep. That is going to be the 2 spots in which Alabama is going to be, if you want to say, quote-unquote, vulnerable, right? Which I'm not necessarily sure that they're vulnerable anyway. But if they're going to be vulnerable, it's going to be with the deep ball with corners. Their safeties are going to be young as well. And then mobile quarterbacks just always seem to have success against their defense. I'm not necessarily sure exactly what it is, whether they're all just ball hawkers or what the case may be. So when you look down the list of teams, I know Jawon Pass, maybe he's not the most polished guy because he hasn't been out there playing, but you got Fitzgerald, at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Auburn, I know Stidham is not, he's not the fastest, the most athletic, but he has the ability to run with his feet, right? So there are multiple teams in the SEC that could possibly give Alabama a little bit of,
give them some trouble, but I don't really look for anybody to give Alabama that much of a problem this year.
And now that you mentioned that, when you look at the schedule, you play at LSU, then Mississippi State and Auburn at home. If those are your 3 toughest games, and you have a team like Alabama, I don't think you're losing a game.
I am honestly going to be really disappointed if Alabama loses one this year. It's going to be shocking to me because their schedule is prime for them to go undefeated and just make another run at it. And somebody's going to have to catch them kind of sleepy and underestimating their opponent.
typically when Alabama doesn't play well, it's going to be on the road. When they catch them in an odd week or after a bye week or something like that, something just seems crazy to happen. But at LSU, who we'll get to in just a few minutes, but I don't think LSU's that team. So when you look at Mississippi State and Auburn at home, I always like Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Like they're just not losing. They're just not losing at Alabama at home. So they're the favorites, 1.5 to 1. Alabama. Let's move on to the second team. That's Georgia. We touched a little bit on them. He's got to take a step forward. Last year, they just relied so much on Chubb and Michelle, and I know we talked about this earlier today. How many yards did they rack up?
All of them.
Yeah, I mean, like literally in the pass game, in the run game, whatever. Literally.
Right. We were talking about that earlier because guys like Snell in the league that are rushing for 1,300 yards in a season, they're getting overlooked because of guys like Chubb who are just running all over everybody in the country. They're just phenomenal, and I think because they have had that over the last few years with Chubb and Michelle and Gurley and all of them running through there, they haven't really had to rely on their quarterback too much. So that, like we said earlier, Georgia's going to be a little down this year trying to figure out, that offense.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, it's scary to think that now. From the game's on your back now.
Right.
Now, he made a couple throws in the national championship game, so I'm not going to literally discount his ability, right? I think he has a big upside, but like last year, for instance, he didn't have to do anything, right? He had two guys that literally he's just like, hey, man, I'm just going to toss the ball to you, and you just kind of do your thing. So my biggest issue with Georgia is you lose Chubb, Michelle, Wynn, and Wims from the offense. You lose Smith, Thompson, Carter, Bellamy, Atkins, Sanders from the defense. For me, I'm going to be hard pressed, especially even defensively on the defensive side of the ball, for Georgia to be as dominant as they were, especially towards the end of the season, especially the first half of the national championship game. Alabama had nothing. Now, is that Hurts's issue? Is that Alabama's play calling issue? Who knows? But the fact that Georgia literally held them to nothing. They had nothing. I just think defensively, again, Georgia going to be a big struggle. Next, Auburn. This is the team that, how do I want to put it? Auburn is going to go as Stidham goes. So Stidham is the guy that has to really take the next step. I know the backfield is literally depleted, right? Mm-hmm. Cam Martin is going to be the guy. He had 6 yards per carry in very, very limited action last season. You look at their schedule, they play Washington very first game of the year. Neutral site game.
Yep.
Okay? Literally top 10 matchup. Very first week. You play LSU at home, then you play at Mississippi State, at Georgia, at Alabama. You look at this team as a whole and you're just like, I don't know if you can win all 5 of those games. If not, I don't know if you win 3 of them.
No, I'm a little worried about Auburn this year. They're primed to really get whipped pretty bad, and starting the season off with Washington there, a favorite to make a return back to the Final Four, I guess, for college football playoff is they're in for it.
Yeah, I agree. I really think Stidham has to take it with Fromm, and this is going to be a recurring theme because we're getting ready to go to Mississippi State and Fitzgerald. Quarterback. We talked about Kentucky. Kentucky, I think, goes as good as their quarterback is going to be. Yep. Right, so Stidham has to step up, has to make throws. He's been a little bit inconsistent, but I think if Stidham progresses forward, Cam in the backfield maybe gets more carry. He'll obviously get more carries, but maybe he can be as successful as he was. You'll find out early. Very first game of the year, how good are you really? Because they're young on the defensive side of the ball as well. A lot of growing up to do for Auburn if they want to get to the SEC championship again, possibly win the SEC championship and go on to the college football playoff. Again, as I mentioned, Mississippi State, it all comes down to Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald had possibly one of the most gruesome injuries I've ever seen in the Egg Bowl. Now they had a backup quarterback that plays in the Belk Bowl against Louisville, right? And what did he do? Just gone bananas. I mean, just went nuts on us, okay? So What's interesting about Mississippi State, you get a new new head coach that was an offensive coordinator at Penn State. What he did at Penn State was use his running backs in the pass game and the run game significantly. That's why Saquon Barkley was such a hot commodity when it came to the NFL draft. He can not only run the ball with success, but he catches the ball out of the backfield when needed. Also, good returner, speed. Mississippi State's not currently set up for something like that. You're talking about a guy in Arius Williams. That's who I was thinking about earlier. He rushed for 1,000 yards last season, but he's not that guy that I forget what he is, like 6'3" or 6'2", but he weighs like 255. He's not that speedy guy that you're going to put on the outside. You're going to throw a swing pass to, right? And you go, man, 80 yards.
He's that guy you need when you need a couple inches to get that first down.
Exactly. And I think maybe it takes Moorhead a little bit longer to get his guys in to try and figure out exactly what he wants to do. He has the talent at Mississippi State to be successful this season. But when you look at their schedule, they go to Kansas State first week of the season. They play Auburn at home, at LSU, at Alabama, and then I always want to put in at Ole Miss. The Egg Bowl is always one of those games that you just don't know. One team can be ranked 1, the other one can be 0-11, and the game's a 3-point game.
Yeah, but I really don't see Ole Miss making any moves right now with the probation and everything. They're just so down and hard pressed with everything going on down there. I don't see that one being really much in doubt.
And that's a really good point you bring that up, and we'll talk about Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss, the only way they win games, and you talked about probation, so they can't win SEC championship and they can't go to a bowl game or college football playoff, whatever. But Ole Miss, if they're going to win games, they're going to score 1 billion points.
Yeah.
Their offense is going to be high octane. So 1 billion points for them. But moving on, Mississippi State, I kind of agree with you. I just think the whole coaching change, it drives me crazy, right? I mean, Moorhead, he just seems so blah. I'm just not buying it. Just not buying it. So Florida, we touched on it a little bit when it came to playing Kentucky the second week of the season at home. Past that, you have QB issues, so Dan Mullen has to make a choice. Is it Franks or is it Trask? Trask is more the down the field threat. Franks is more the dual threat, not a very good arm, not very accurate, but he's really good with his feet. So he has to make a decision there. He has all of the pieces to be so successful here if he just had a quarterback. He's got a good running back. He's got a good wide receivers. He's got a good defense, although, like I mentioned, I'm not a fan of Grantham. I think Grantham blitzes too much. I think he throws the kitchen sink in the first half. Second half is just wide open. You can score as many points as you want. So what's interesting to me, and I'll bring this up when the game actually comes up, Kentucky torched Todd Grantham and Louisville just a couple years ago when Kentucky came in to Cardinal Stadium and beat us. I don't see any problem as to why Stoops can't take the same game plan that he had for that specific game and apply it against Florida. That's the issue that I'm going to have with Florida. I think they'll be able to score, especially more points than what they did last year. But I just don't know with Grant. And maybe it's because Grantham coached here, but I'm just not a fan. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, it's with all the coaching changes and everything down there and Mullen's first year and everything, there's just so many questions, I guess, to be left answered about how everything's going to fall together with them. It's just nobody's going to know until the first kickoff on September 1st.
Right.
We'll answer a lot of questions about Florida then.
Well, and when we look at Florida's schedule, you're talking about Charleston Southern. It's a gimme, but then Kentucky, Colorado State in a weird game because Colorado State's favored to win their conference. Mm-hmm. But then at Tennessee, at Mississippi State, LSU at home, at Vandy, at Georgia, Missouri, who we'll talk about. I actually like Missouri quite a bit. I think Locke's going to just throw it all over the yard. I know they'll give up 60 points, but they're going to try and score 61. Right. So, but then you play South Carolina at home, Idaho at home, and then at Florida State. I just don't. You look at this and you're like 7-5-ish. I mean, maybe you reach 8 wins. I don't know. Charleston Southern, Kentucky, Colorado State. You have LSU at home, who you should beat. Missouri, Idaho. I mean, that's 6. At Vandy. Vandy's a gimme. Okay, so Tennessee probably should be a gimme as well, but that's a rivalry game.
Yeah, that's another one of those games. But I think Florida will get Tennessee.
So I just don't see this 10-2 season. Like, I just don't see Mullen going down there all of a sudden winning 10 games.
No, people that think that, I think they need to adjust their expectations a little bit. Florida's, trying to figure themselves out right now.
And like I mentioned, I'm not sold on these kids being committed. I mean, so many issues off the field last season. Maybe Mullen comes in, cleans all that out, whatever, everything's good to go. But I would be leery of backing Florida for 9 wins, 10 wins, something like that, when there's been so many issues, especially last year. So I'm off of Florida. I don't like Florida. We'll get to my pick for the East here in just a minute, but no Florida for me. No thanks. All right, here you go. Texas A&M. You ready for this schedule? Check this out. Northwestern State. Okay, all right. I'll give you that. Here you go. You ready? Clemson, Louisiana Monroe, at Bama, at Arkansas, Kentucky, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, at Auburn, Ole Miss, UAB, then LSU. How many wins y'all get? Come on, Jimbo. First year. Oh, Jimbo, he's gonna be the man.
He'll get 6 wins, 5 or 6 wins this year.
I'll give you 6. I'll give you 6. I mean, Northwestern State, Louisiana Monroe, that's 2, right? You play UAB at home, that's 3.
Yeah.
Now, you got Ole Miss, who, again, like, I'll give that to them. Okay, that's 4. We'll get to LSU in a point that you made. I don't like LSU at all. I think, especially last game of the season, I think that could be just a rout. So that's 5. You're definitely not beating Clemson.
Absolutely not.
You're not beating Bama at Alabama.
Nope.
No fucking way. You play at Arkansas. I mean, struggling a little bit, rebuilding. Chad Morris, play Kentucky at home.
I think Kentucky's going to lose out there. Okay. That is a loss I do look for Kentucky to take.
I think, and like I said, this is one of the teams that will come up here in just a second. But at South Carolina, I don't think they can win that game. I don't think they win at Mississippi State. And then of course at Auburn, I don't like them to win that game either. So I would give you 6 wins, perhaps 7, maybe if he gets the tide rolling, gets the fans into it. Maybe they can sneak one. Perhaps maybe, I don't know, Mississippi State, maybe Fitzgerald gets hurt again, or he's not as good as what he was before he got hurt or something. I don't know. 6 wins, 7 wins maybe. Cap. That is absolute top.
Yep.
So what's interesting, though, is I like Mond, the quarterback, in a Jimbo Fisher system. He reminds me so much of Jameis Winston. Mobile with his feet, although he's faster than Jameis Winston, but he has a better arm than Jameis Winston does, which is saying something because Winston has a serious arm. Now, I don't know what the issue was with Sumlin. I don't know maybe what the issue is right now with Fisher, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Starkle is the number 1 guy.
From what I hear.
Mond is the 2nd guy. But I like Mond going forward. So I think perhaps maybe they could take a step forward if Mond becomes their quarterback. But, it's to be seen. So next, a team that I don't like at all. 0, negative. I don't even know how to say it. Like, just don't like them at all. And I think this is the coach that gets fired first this season. That's Coach Orgeron at LSU. LSU, the Tigers, they play Miami in a neutral site game. Loss. Southeast Louisiana. Oh.
That's a toughie.
They should win 60-0. But, of course, LSU doesn't score, so it's going to be like 24-3.
Right.
Okay. Then they play at Auburn. They play La Tech at home, which is interesting because La Tech plays that high rate, air raid offense, whatever. They want to score 800 points. So against a team who doesn't score, a la Troy, okay, everybody knows what happened last year, right?
Right.
When Orgeron should have been fired after that game. So they play La Tech at home, then Ole Miss at home, but then at Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State at home, Alabama at home, at Arkansas, Rice, then at Texas A&M. I'm struggling to see 5 wins.
I don't disagree with you on
okay,
that.
So how does Orgeron not get fired this season?
For everything that I've heard, the way his contract and stuff is, they would have to pay him too much money, and they're already paying, I guess, Les Miles too much money on the back end for his buyout, so they wouldn't be able to afford, me to go coach them if they fired Coach O.
That's interesting because you would think if you're paying Les Miles, wouldn't you want to get this coaching job right? And you went with Orgeron?
You would think, but
Orgeron's contract is not what I would consider light on the budget.
No.
So Orgeron, you're saying, from what you understand or what you've heard, what you've read, if they're paying Les Miles, they can't fire Orgeron because they would have to pay him a buyout.
Right.
And then hire somebody else.
Exactly.
Damn it. I was going to bet Orgeron is the first coach fired. So maybe it's Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. Although
he's got a lot of pressure on him this year.
If they're going to be top 10, well, they'll be consensus top 15. Mm-hmm. And with their schedule, they have every chance to make it to the college football playoff. Right? Their big games are going to be at home. Stanford and USC are going to be at home. I even think they play Miami, perhaps. I think that game's at home. So they have every chance, not to get sidetracked, but Notre Dame has every chance to be as good as what they want to be and accomplish whatever they want to. If Brian Kelly doesn't at least have a season that's respectable, see ya. So LSU, I guess Orgeron, we can't bet Orgeron as the first coach fired. So I'm disappointed in that. But Chris, thank you for the info.
You're welcome.
So moving on here, I get to the team that I like to win the East in the SEC, and that's South Carolina.
I agree.
South Carolina, if you're not drinking the UGA Kool-Aid, right? If you're not drinking the Georgia Kool-Aid, if you think that Georgia is going to regress, I just like South Carolina, okay? They went 9-4, and I just touched on this a little bit ago. They went 9-4 and scored 17 points or less in 6 of the last 11 games of the season. They went 9-4. What? You're talking about an offense that has now 9 players coming back, a defense that has 9 players coming back. Why wouldn't you think that this team progresses forward, especially on the offensive side of the ball? I just think everything that there is in the SEC, there's a lot of changes, coaches, a lot of new faces, going to be young on one side of the ball and have some talent on the other side, but you don't really know. You don't get the full package. This is the only team that retains literally a full package of players, and they went 9-4 last season. So I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid for UGA. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid of Dan Mullen, right? So I'm settling on South Carolina. Okay, South Carolina to me, especially when you look at their schedule, Coastal Carolina, but then UGA at home, then you play Marshall, then at Vandy, at Kentucky, which is interesting because that's all. Kentucky's beat them 4 straight seasons.
4 years in a row.
4 straight seasons, right?
They're hunting for us this year.
Now, when you think about last season, South Carolina went 9-4. They lost to Kentucky at home.
By 10.
Okay, at home.
Yeah.
And then they lost to a Texas A&M team that they should have never lost to.
Mm-mm.
Okay? So you're talking about this 2 they could have been 11-2 last season.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
11-2.
It's crazy.
And you're talking about 6 of the last 11 games they didn't score 17 points? Get the fuck out of here. I mean, seriously. Like, shut up. So, Jake Bentley back at quarterback. Deebo Samuel, the running back. Again, as I said, defense returns 9 starters. Here's the biggest issue with South Carolina. Will Muschamp just doesn't ever want to score the ball. Am I wrong?
That's why they only scored 17 points in those last games.
I mean, like, seriously, like, just put the ball in the fucking end zone. I mean, I just don't understand. Like, he just wants to hold the ball forever. Mm-hmm. I'll let my defense, and then we'll get the ball at 50, and, then we'll kick a field goal.
Makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Because all you need to do is score 17 to win.
It works, though.
I understand. So this is the one issue that you have with South Carolina. If perhaps you're a little bit leery of South Carolina, is the fact that although they return so many starters on the offensive side of the ball, which should improve, and I think does improve, how much do they improve? Do they, instead of scoring 17, do they score 20?
I think, honestly, that is going to end up depending on the players. So they got to put the foot down a little bit on the gas and punch it in there. So
yeah, geez.
Hopefully
get it together. So I think if South Carolina wants to win, especially the East, they have to score the football. I mean, in touchdowns. So I'm not talking about field goals here. I'm talking about touchdowns. You talking about practice? No, bro. I'm talking about touchdowns. Okay, touchdowns. Allen Iverson, my best Allen Iverson voice. So I think the schedule sets up well for them. Their biggest games are at Florida towards the end of the season. That's going to be a huge game. Then they have Texas A&M at home and UGA at home. Outside of that, they play Clemson at Clemson the very last game of the season, but that doesn't have anything to do with the SEC. Okay, you look at their SEC schedule. I just don't see a whole lot there to be quote unquote afraid of. So I like South Carolina. South Carolina, for me, wins the East. Now, a team that, again, I touched base on just a few minutes ago. Drew Lock. How many yards is he going to pass for this season? 5,000? Literally, he's going to throw it so many times.
He could get you to the moon and back probably with how much he's going to throw that ball.
Literally, I'm not kidding you when I say they will give up 60 points. But I promise you, you do not want Drew Lock to have the ball to win the game. Because that sumbitch is driving down the field and he's going to score a touchdown. Yeah. I guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting about Missouri, from my point of view at least, when you look at their schedule when it comes to the SEC only, you got UGA at home, at South Carolina, at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
But you get Kentucky at home, Vandy at home, at Tennessee, Arkansas at home, at Florida, Kentucky at home. Everything kind of sets up, especially in Columbia. In Columbia, they're putting up points.
Yeah, and Columbia's a hard place to play.
So, Missouri putting up points, especially last half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. What were they? 0-4, 0-3, and they were getting drubbed. I mean,
yeah.
They scored like serious, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, let's play football. Let's start scoring touchdowns. And all of a sudden, Locke is just like, hey man, I got this.
If I'm not mistaken, that was around the Kentucky game when they finally figured out how to play ball.
Isn't that ironic?
Right.
So, to me, Missouri, I don't necessarily think that they win 7 or 8 games, like something crazy. But the fact that Locke is going to throw for 1 billion yards, they're going to put up points. You have to think that they're going to win games. They're going to surprise somebody. I don't necessarily know who it's going to be. It could be at Florida or something crazy, right? But they're going to go to wherever or at home, and they're just going to put up bundles of points. So Missouri, a little bit interesting to me. Tennessee, we touched on it. I don't know what to expect. The entire coaching carousel, whatever you want to say about it, I mean, what a shit show. Literally. I mean, just complete shit show. Now all of a sudden you have a guy who in Pruitt is just like, whatever, So they play perhaps one of the worst schedules in the SEC, right? They play Florida at home, at Georgia, at Auburn, Bama at home, at South Carolina, Kentucky at home, Missouri at home, and at Vandy. No thanks. You're talking about 4 wins. You got Tennessee, Martin, and Wyoming, and I think Wyoming can beat them in Knoxville. So, to me, 4 wins, and that's if, hell, I don't know. I mean, you beat somebody other than East Tennessee State and UTEP. Charlotte is another one, so that's 3 wins right there. You play at Vandy. Vandy's not. I'm telling you, Vandy is not going to win an SEC game. They will be like. How about this? Hot take. Write this down. Write this down because this is Travis. Right, make sure you write this down. This needs to be in the notes. Vandy will not come within 10 points of winning an SEC game. Hot take. What do you think?
Not coming within 10 points.
Not within 10 points. I don't care. I don't give a shit who they play at home. Here, let's go over the home games for them, because you know that literally the only chance that they have is if they play a home game against like Kentucky, which do they? I don't think they do. So, Vandy football schedule. SEC. How about South Carolina at home? No. They lose by more than 10. At Georgia. Okay. Florida at home. No. At Kentucky. No chance. Benny Snell's going to run for 500 yards in that game. Let's be real. 500 yards. Over, under. I'm taking the over. Okay. At Arkansas, Chad Morris is going to light up that defense. I don't care if he has dogs playing. Okay. I don't care if he has Razorbacks playing as wide receivers. They are scoring touchdowns. Okay. Then at Missouri, how many yards is Lott going to throw for in that game?
Oh God, it's going to be a hate crime.
Okay.
It's going to be bad.
More yards. Benny Snell's total rushing yards times 2, or Lock's passing yards. Seriously, it's literally going to be 200 and 450. It's going to be awful. And then, of course, you have Ole Miss at home. How about it?
That's the one.
Ooh.
That's the one they're going to do it.
Ooh. Okay, what about Tennessee at home? Last game of the season.
See, I could see it happen in those 2 weeks, either one of those games, because Vandy, especially late in the season when people are starting to get a little tired, they're starting to look towards those bowl games if they have that record and everything, or they have the injuries, they don't care anymore. They'll sneak one in on you, and that'll give Vandy fans like their 2 wins or whatever they have at that point in the year, and they're happy, and on to the next year.
Huh.
Vandy's sneaky. You got to watch them.
I'm still going to take them not winning a game, or not only not winning a game, they're not going to come within 10 points of winning a game.
I'm going to take that bet with you.
Okay. How much? $20. Friendly $20.
$20.
You got it. We're on. Friendly bet, $20. Vanderbilt not coming within 10 points of winning an SEC game. Let's go. Okay. So back to the task at hand, though. Now, went over Tennessee, Ole Miss. They're going to put up points. This is a team, actually, when it comes to wagering advice, when it comes to SEC, this is a team that I'm literally going to play the over total points in a game, almost every game this entire season. They're going to put up points. They're going to give up points. How about this? The very first week, guess who they play? Texas Tech. How many points are going to be in that game? Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to put up 60.
They may as well just tell the defense to stay home.
Yes. Just... Look, we'll concede 5 points every time they get the ball, as long as we just get the ball right back. Y'all just kick off. We'll just concede 5 points. Just give us the ball back. I'm telling you, the game is going to be like 60-40. It's going to be ridiculous. But past that, when it comes to SEC action, they play Bama at home. No. At LSU. No. At Arkansas. No. Auburn at home, hard pass. South Carolina at home. This is one of the most interesting games because you'll have high-octane offense against an offense that just wants to score 10. Interesting game. Not necessarily saying upset alert, but interesting game when you look at it. At Texas A&M, At Vandy, oh, here we go. That's one. Then Mississippi State at home in the Egg Bowl. So... Ole Miss, they're not beating Texas Tech, not beating Bama. They'll beat Southern Illinois and Kent State, and at Vandy. Louisiana Monroe, they'll win. So that's 4. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. Lastly, Arkansas. Because we touched on Vandy. Vandy's not going to win a game. It's going to be ridiculous. Arkansas, very last one. Eastern Illinois, then at Colorado State, North Texas at home. Then look. At Auburn, Texas A&M, Bama, Ole Miss, Vandy, LSU, at Mississippi State, at Missouri, Arkansas, Chad Morris. Hey, welcome to the SEC, okay? If perhaps you get 4 wins, total, if you get 2 wins in the SEC, hey, congratulations. Welcome to the SEC. I must say, I like Chad Morris. I like the hire of Chad Morris. I like what he stands for. I like the offense that he runs. He's going to be a fun guy in the SEC. Now, I just had recent information just given to me. Breaking news. Travis, with On the Switch, the producer of this show, says that the Arkansas-Vandy game, Vandy will win outright. That is their one win for the SEC.
I like it. I
don't.
Faith in the Commodores.
I don't at all. They're going to get drubbed. They're going to win by... Arkansas is going to win by 3 touchdowns. Chad Morris is... I told you, Chad Morris could literally put Razorbacks out there. He's scoring touchdowns. Okay? Vandy is just... Look, Shermer's back, okay? And I don't mean to completely hate on Vandy. Love Vandy. Love the city of Nashville. But listen, Shermer's back, but that's it. Defense is young. Running backs are young. Wide receivers are young.
See, this is the problem, though. Everyone is thinking like you are, and somebody isn't going to show up to the game, and Vandy's going to get them.
So are you saying that Vandy is going to win a game, or they're going to come close to winning a game?
They're at least going to break your 10-point margin, if not sneak a win.
No way.
Last second field goal if it happens.
Oh, God, here we go. No chance. Vandy, I'm sorry. I love y'all again. I love y'all's baseball team. I love the city of Nashville. I love everything about, literally, the university is gorgeous. Okay, one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever been to in my life. I love y'all. From Louisville to Nashville, all the love. But y'all ain't winning an SEC game, and y'all ain't coming within 10 points. Let's get it. Let's not get it twisted. So for me, when it comes to betting the SEC, I do like South Carolina to win the East as my best bet. They are currently as live odds 20-1 to win the SEC altogether. I just don't know if anybody from the East can beat anybody in the West. And the West representative is going to be Alabama for me, right? Alabama's going to go undefeated. They're not going to lose a game. You look at their schedule, there is nobody on that schedule that they're going to lose to, period. End of story. Just plain and simple. So if South Carolina plays Alabama, what kind of chance does South Carolina have?
Oh, man. Like I said earlier, I don't see anybody in the SEC beating Alabama, even in the title game in Atlanta. I just don't think South Carolina has the weapons and the power to overcome Alabama.
100% agree, and especially with a team like you said, you just mentioned, a team like South Carolina who basically wants to run or play the same way that Alabama wants to play. You can't beat them at their own game.
No.
Okay.
It's like you said earlier, you got to have that mobile quarterback, and you got to be able to throw bombs against them.
Hey, that's not South Carolina. But I do like South Carolina to win the East. That is my best bet. The next best bet, for me at least, actually comes with Kentucky. The over-under for games won for Kentucky is 5.5. They will definitely top 5.5. They will make another bowl game this season. 5.5, ship it. Kentucky over, way over. I say 7-5. You dig?
I'll take it.
I don't think they beat Florida, though.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Gainesville's a tough one.
In Lexington, maybe. Gainesville, no thanks. But you'll have winnable games at home. I say 7-5, over 5.5, easy. Lastly, I think the biggest bet, if you can still get 1.5 to 1, so 1.5 to 1 on your money for Alabama to win the SEC title, take it. Big. Really big. Alabama will not only the best team in the nation, although I'm going to have another team that we'll go over in a podcast that's coming up as my team to win the national title, but Alabama is the best team in the nation without question.
They're not going to do it.
Who's going to win?
Bama. It's going to be Bama all year.
Okay. Little forecasting here. I like Washington to win the national championship. Washington.
Contender, man, but I'm going to back the Tide. I'm SEC all the way. I'm going to stay behind them until somebody can prove that they can dethrone Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide every year.
And I can't blame anybody who wants to back them at 3.5 to 1. They're 3.5 to 1 currently to win the national championship, and I think that's probably a slam dunk for most people. For me, I like Washington. I like value. Washington's 12 to 1. I think at the end of the day, Alabama is obviously the one to beat, without question. 1.5 to 1 to win the SEC, though, book it. No chance that they lose to Auburn at home, at LSU, Mississippi State at home. No way. They're not losing in Tuscaloosa, period. End of story. There's no such thing as Johnny Manziel. Alabama, big. 1.5 to 1. Love them. I appreciate Chris being on the show today. Hope you had a good time.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. From everybody here in the studio, Travis, Gene, Chris, everybody, I want you all to go first to iTunes, subscribe to us, leave us a 5-star rating as always. And once you do that, take 2 seconds out, go over to YouTube, look up On the Switch Show on YouTube, subscribe to us there. Drop us a comment on any of our videos if you want us to address anything on the show. From everybody here, again, Chris, myself, and Travis, everybody at On the Switch, we appreciate you all listening, and we love you all.
On the Switch.